Hi everyone, Shawn with Secure Cyber Defense, and this is your bi-weekly video update. Well, there's a lot going on in the cybersecurity world specific to vulnerabilities, so let's just jump right into it. So this week, D-Link has mentioned that they have some vulnerabilities with their Wi-Fi routers, Wi-Fi extenders. This is specifically the DAP1860 model. So if you're using that version of the extender, just hop out to the manufacturer website and gather those updates. Logitech has a LAN controller called LAN W300N. The research I did on this shows that it's pretty old. It's about 10 years old. It doesn't even look like it's sold anymore, which is not totally uncommon for hackers to take advantage of older technology. But if you're using the LAN W300N, there is a patch available for that. Netgear has about 13 routers inside their inventory that are vulnerable to attack. If you're utilizing any of the versions affected, in the description of the video on YouTube, we'll have a link to all of this, so you can check out the specific versions, but any of this stuff is easily updated by going out to the manufacturer's site. Cisco Anyconnect has some vulnerabilities that are present. If you're currently utilizing that for remote VPN, especially with work from home going on, grab the latest version of Cisco Anyconnect and get that installed. Google Chrome has a number of updates available. If you're a Chrome user, up in the top right-hand corner, usually they have like a green update placard. You can just click on that. If you have a bunch of windows open, it'll just close them and then reopen them back for you. So there's no fear of trying to figure out where you last left off. And then VMware, from the time that we put this show together, VMware came out with updates for the ESXi, vCenter, and Cloud Foundation software. So VMware, like Hyper-V, is used very heavily for virtualization technology. So if you're a VMware house, just make sure that you're updating your ESXi and your vCenter servers. And then Mozilla Firefox has a number of updates that have come up. So if you're a Firefox user, again, make sure that you're keeping your browsers up to date. OT systems have become part of the news recently. OT meaning operational technology. That can also mean industrial control systems, or ICS. OT systems like the vulnerable Florida water system that we saw in the news when the last video that we did. OT is very similar to IoT, IoT meaning Internet of Things. OT is just more tied to critical infrastructure type things like power plants and wastewater utilities and those types of things, water systems. It's very important. One of the things that we've seen with OT is just the visibility of inventory, noticing what you have and what you're able to protect. If you don't know about it, you can't protect it. If you don't know about it, you can't design a response to an incident. So just like OT, IoT, and anything else that we've talked about on this show as far as knowing your inventory, know your hardware, know your software, all this is just driving even more the importance of understanding what you have inside your network. Smaller networks, it's a lot easier to understand what you have. As you get larger, without the processes and the documentation systems to keep up with that, it's just going to make your ability to respond even harder. I want to talk for a minute too about the Excellion incident, which is the system that Kroger was compromised with. Understand, Kroger itself was not compromised. A third party was compromised. And the reason we bring this up is I want to talk about, just for a minute, understanding who your third parties are. So who are you shipping your data to? Many companies have third parties that maybe they ship a customer database to, or some other form of information to process. It's very important for you to understand who these vendors are, what they're doing with your data, what data they have, and more importantly, what is the security of your third-party vendor? Vendor management, years ago, vendor management was a thing, and now it's even more. Because now we tie, not only do we have vendor management, but now we have APIs. So it's so easy to move data around, but you really have to, again, it's something I've talked about on the show before, but the Chief Documentation Officer, the CDO, it's becoming more of a thing. So making sure that you have the documentation of who these vendors are and that you have proper agreements with them to understand what they're doing with your data, how they have it, and more importantly, how they're securing it. So just take mind of who your third-party vendors are and what they're doing with your stuff. State-sponsored attacks are obviously becoming more frequent. We processed an incident over the weekend, which was Russian-based, and we just continue to see state-sponsored attacks. One of the things I want to point out, we've talked about it on the show quite a bit, is the importance of EDR technology, endpoint detection and response. Most of the traditional antivirus nowadays is just not able to handle a threat actor actually writing malware that night. So in traditional antivirus, there's signatures. So everything's signature based. It's going to look it's not entirely signature based, but for the most part, it's looking for a fingerprint. So EDR technology is a little bit of the opposite. So EDR is more behavioral. So it knows how ransomware and some of these other forms of malware operate, and it's looking for them to make that move versus looking for an actual signature. If you haven't invested in EDR technology, I encourage you to contact either us or whoever your trusted provider is, and ask them today about what it would take to move you to an EDR platform. One of the things that we're going to do different on the show is we're going to cover what's called the term of the week. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take topics like threat hunting and SIM and SOAR and all these things, and we're going to break them down and describe them for you and give you a definition of what they mean. Today we're going to talk about threat hunting, and it's something that we do very often here at Secure Cyber Defense as part of our Security Operations Center or our Cyber Intelligence Center. What threat hunting, I used to be a police officer, so I'm going to tie this to an actual illustration for you. That if your house was to be broken into, one of the first things that you'll do is you'll call 911, and they'll tell you not to touch anything until the police officer gets there. So when the officer shows up to actually take your report, somebody will show up after him that's called the evidence technician. And one of the things the evidence technician will do is he'll look for a point of entry in areas maybe where things have been disturbed or items have been taken, and he's gonna put down this black powder that's gonna go down, and he's gonna dust for fingerprints. Then he's going to take a piece of clear tape and he's going to lay it on top of the fingerprint, and he's going to lift that latent print off of the item. Then we can take that latent print, the police officer can put that on a card, and we can put that into a system and search that fingerprint to see if that fingerprint has been used anywhere else. And that's what threat hunting is. So when bad guys break into your networks, they leave fingerprints behind. They leave things like IP addresses. They may leave file hashes. File hashes are like an individual serial number for a document. Maybe it's a domain. So those things combined are called indicators of compromise, or IOCs. And so what threat hunting means is that security centers are actually able to take those indicators of compromise, and we can load them into tools, and we can do two things. One, the tools can actively search your network for those fingerprints or for those IOCs to tell you if the threat actor is inside or has been inside your environment. And then the second thing we can do is load those same IOCs into all of the proactive technology, so that when, from that point forward, if anybody was to cross the network that had any of those fingerprints, the firewall or the device would stop it. So that's what threat hunting means, and that's how we use it. On Shawn's Soapbox, I'm not going to cover the topic that this is the fourth time I recorded this video, not by my doing. That's another soapbox that I've tackled already. But what I want to talk about today is just one of the things that we've seen, especially with previous incident responses, is the lack of ability for IT departments to do things en masse. Meaning that we need, as incident responders, one of the things that we might need you to do is we may say, one part of evidence that we've gotten from this incident is we need you to search all 1,000 machines. We need you to search all of the scheduled tasks, pull up all of the scheduled tasks that are populated on all those devices and sort them. Maybe pull out common things like disk cleanup and things that we don't want to see, so that we can very quickly determine how many machines have been compromised with persistence. Hackers will very often use the scheduled task system to load persistence, meaning that when you restart the computer, the scheduled task reloads the malware. So instead of purging it out of memory, as soon as you reboot, it returns again. So I just want to encourage you that this is a brave new world. So having IT people that understand things like PowerShell, or maybe just needing to understand the tools that you have in your network, or maybe you need to invest in tools so that you can have the ability to do a mass query or a mass search on a dime, right? Just quickly. So I won't go too much about it. I just want to encourage everybody to maybe look at that type of technology, or look at the tools that you have available. Heck, even IT people just taking an inventory of maybe what's available to you, so that when it comes time and you need to use that technology, being able to do that. And as we wrap up the show, I want to cover a couple different things. One, in secure cyber defense news, we are now CIS Secure Suite members, meaning that while we do our assessments and we do them for the CIS control set, we now have a number of tools that are available to us that weren't available. So we now have the ability to scan your network overall and tell you how compliant you are with the CIS controls, as well as utilizing the benchmarks. And the benchmarks are tools that we can point at individual servers or systems to tell you how that particular system lines up with national standards from a security standpoint. So we'll be able to tell you exactly how secure your computer is, or your server. And then in Fortinet news, Gartner has recently recognized FortiMail as a Peer Insights Consumer Choice for 2021. So bravo to Fortinet. If many of you are or are not familiar with Gartner, Gartner is an independent firm that produces research. Many of you are probably familiar with the Gartner Magic Quadrant, which is where they have this chart that shows the top right-hand quadrant is the best place to be. But I just wanted to say kudos to Fortinet for their award.